Welcome to 4002, Tenor Chord Tuning and Pitch Selection. In this very important class, we're going to talk about why we pitch our tenor drums to certain notes and how they are connected directly to the Great Highland Bagpipe. We're also going to talk about the different drum sizes that we have and why it's important to pick certain drum sizes for certain notes. Let's start by talking about drum sizes. In tenor drumming, our drums can go from as small as a 12-inch tenor drum to as large as a 20 or even a 22-inch tenor drum. That being said, let's start the conversation by talking about drum sizes. Tenor drums can come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes. The vast majority of the tenor drums that you're going to come across are either 14-inch, 15-inch, 16-inch, 18-inch, or 20-inch tenor drums of varying depths. This range of tenor drums provides the most consistency for note selection and allows us to pick notes that are easy to get our tenor drums to. So how do we pick our tenor drums based on what notes they need to be tuned at? The smaller the tenor drum, the higher the note. The bigger the tenor drum, the lower the note. The smaller tenor drums can hold higher notes better because the tension in the head is much higher. The lugs are much closer together and it can hold higher pitches with greater accuracy. The reverse can be said about larger tenor drums. Larger tenor drums have less lugs, are spaced wider apart, and have less tension across the entire head surface. It's important to consider as well the range of each tenor drum size. Tenor drums, depending on the size, don't have much variation in how high or how low they can go beyond their most comfortable note. This is especially important to consider when we're working in the middle notes. If we have, say, two 14-inch drums and we need to pull one all the way down to the middle of our scheme, it's going to be pretty tough to do. At that point, you would want to consider a 15-inch or a 16-inch tenor drum to be far closer to that desired note value. The same goes with the larger end of the scale. If we need to bring an 18-inch tenor drum up to the middle of our note scheme, it's going to be really tough to do. The head is going to be extremely tight and there's not going to be nearly any resonance from the heads of that tenor drum. Therefore, when your band is purchasing tenor drums, it's extremely important to consider what sizes you're purchasing relative to what note scheme you might be trying to implement. Your pipe band should have a range of sizes of tenor drums that best suits their needs. For bands that I teach that are looking to purchase new tenor drums, I say you want to have at least one small drum, two middle drums, and one big drum, depending on the numbers that are in the midsection. That way you're covering off the full range of possible note schemes for the number of people that are in your midsection. Now that we've talked about drum selection, let's talk about note selection and why we use a specific scale to complement our midsection performance. The Great Highland Bagpipe is tuned in A. Therefore, as a midsection, we should also be considering A and its relative notes as the means to tune our tenor drums. A is the root note of the Great Highland Bagpipe. If you recall from 4001, we used their low A to establish the frequency for tuning our tenor drum. Therefore, using the A scale to pick our notes for our tenor drums is a natural choice because it is the scale that is going to best blend with the ensemble and the overall sound of the bagpipe should it be tuned correctly. By blending well with the sound of the bagpipe, we're going to contribute positively to the ensemble, not be in any kind of discord with regards to sound, and generally blend better for the overall ensemble experience. We're going to be tuning our tenor drums using this A scale with the bagpipe chanter. The bagpipe chanter only has 9 notes. It starts with low G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and ends with high A. Now, getting into the final intricacies and why this exists the way it does is going to be covered off in Music Theory Tutor Volume 4. So be sure to check those out for the greater nitty-gritty details about why the bagpipe chanter is the way it is. For our sake, this gives us an outline of notes that we should be considering when we're preparing our note scheme to tune our tenor drums. Now that we understand the structure of the bagpipe chanter, let's talk about the bass drum. The bass drum is always going to be tuned to low A. Like we mentioned previously, low A is the root note of the Great Highland bagpipe. It makes more sense, therefore, to have the bass drum tuned at the root note so that we can expand further off of that root note with higher pitches to contribute to the melody. Although the bass drummer has completely different rhythmic responsibilities compared to us tenor drummers, at the end of the day, the bass drum is one big tenor drum on its side. We need to consider them as part of the harmony, part of the melody when we're effectively tuning our tenor drums and contributing to the overall sound of the ensemble. Let's start by getting into different note values dependent on how many tenor drums you might have in your midsection. To start off with, say you are the lone wolf of your midsection. There is only one tenor drum and a bass drum in your midsection. Since that bass drum is tuned to low A, we don't want to be too low on the scale, otherwise we're going to start blending into the bass drum and not standing out like the awesome monster drummers that we are. At the same time, we don't want to be too far at the high end of the scale because the drum will sound pingy and kind of alone in the universe. It's not going to be blending very well with other kinds of notes. That's why for one tenor drum, I would recommend picking a 16-inch tenor drum and tuning it to E. E is kind of the center of our chord universe at this point. It's not too high, it's not too low, it's just right. It's right in the middle, and it allows you to stand out as a percussionist, but blend well with the bass drum and the rest of the ensemble overall. Let's say that you now have a buddy. You've got two drums in your midsection. At this point in time, we still don't want to be too high pitched at the end of the scale. It's still going to sound kind of pingy and uncomfortable. I'd say at this point in the game, we're all set to introduce a little bit of a lower tone to the midsection. Not too low so that it's blending completely with the bass drummer. We still want that low-pitched tenor drummer to sound and feel awesome about their playing. That's why I would say at this point with two tenor drummers, I would tune these drums to an F and to a C. The F I would tune on a 16-inch tenor drum, maybe a 15-inch tenor drum, but preferably a 16-inch tenor drum. And the C I would definitely tune on an 18-inch tenor drum. It needs just that much more resonance to sound warm and contribute positively to the tone of the midsection. It's important to remember here that I'm still not tuning one of my tenor drummers to that low A, that root note. That's being occupied by my bass drummer, and that note is going to be solely theirs to contribute to the overall harmonic experience. Let's say that you've added another tenor to the party. You've now got 3 tenor drums. At this point in the game, you are ready to add a higher pitched tone to your ensemble. And at this point, I would say high A is the way to go. High A is the way to go in this case because high A and low A are going to blend exceptionally well together. High A on a small tenor drum, about 14 inches. High A is going to be accompanied by E and C. E should be tuned on a 16-inch tenor drum. Right in the middle, provides a lot of variety. C, like with 2 tenor drums, should still be tuned on an 18-inch tenor drum. It just needs that much more resonance to sound warm in the overall ensemble. The 3-note combination of A, E, C, along with the low A on the bass drum, provides the root chord of the Great Highland bagpipe. This is the sound of 4 notes linked together that is going to sound exceptionally harmonic and well balanced in the overall ensemble structure. Moving forward to 4 notes, we have 4 members of the tenor corps playing together now. We're still going to have that high A note. Now we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to have an F, a D, and a B. That high A note is still going to be on our small 14-inch tenor drum, and we know why. It needs that higher tension to sound awesome. F can be on either a 15 or a 16-inch tenor drum, and the decision is up to you. 16-inch tenor drums are far more common than 15-inch tenor drums, so chances are it'll probably be on a 16-inch tenor drum. D can be on either a 16-inch or an 18-inch tenor drum, depending on the needs and the drums available to you. Finally, B, our low tone, is going to definitely be on that 18-inch or even that 20-inch tenor drum if you have it available to you. By tuning B on a larger tenor drum, we're providing consistent, warm, resonant sound on a drum that will be much more capable of holding that low tone throughout the performance. Beyond 4 tenor drummers, 5 and up, things start to get pretty beastly. If you're starting out in your midsection career and you're not quite ready for the harmonic complexities that can come along with changing around our note values like we're about to do, that's totally okay. Stay with the different ranges that A, C, E, and low A can provide to you. It's okay to double up notes, so long as 2 people aren't playing at the exact same time. You would need to divide those notes between people, but still pitch them the same way. Let's now talk about what 5 notes can do for a midsection. For a 5-note midsection, here's what I would recommend. A, G, E, D, and C. We're playing around with the higher note complexities, and it allows us to really play off of those 2 higher notes and gives you a little bit of depth to your higher end of the scale. E and D play really nicely together. They are blending well, and they again allow some complexity between those 2 middle notes. Finally, the addition of C, that root chord friend, keeps the lower end of the scale really tonally complementing the bass drum and giving a little bit more space to the harmonic complexities going on in the upper end of the scale. All of this is dependent on what size drums you have. If your drums aren't going to accommodate these note values successfully, it's important to reconsider these note values and find a system that works best for you. If you have a small drum, a couple medium drums, and a big drum, a lot of these note values will work for you. Keep this in mind as we're going through the rest of these note values to ensure that you're choosing what is best for your midsection. Remember, we can always go back to the root chord of A, E, C, low A. Moving forward with 6 and upward tenor drummers, we're merely adding notes as we're adding drums. For a 6-note scale, I would try A, G, F, E, D, and C. Again, we're adding notes as we're adding drums, and we're continuing to make more complex the harmonic possibilities that we can execute in our midsection. Once again, it's important to recall that these harmonic complexities do not necessarily have to be there to be a successful midsection, but can only contribute and add to the dynamic range that our midsection can provide to the overall ensemble sound. Once again, when we add a 7th tenor drummer, we're just adding another note as we move along, adding B. When we're adding B, we're getting ever so close to the bass drum. So you'll definitely want to put that B on an 18 or even a 20-inch tenor drum if you have it. And finally, at last, we've reached 8 tenor drums. Now, I know you're asking, but shouldn't there be an option for 9 tenor drums? When we're moving from low A to high A using all of the possible notes, we're omitting G underneath the bass drum tone. G for me is not a note that I would want to play on a tenor drum. The reason being is that it's below my bass drum, which is supposed to be the bottom of my scale, and it's exceptionally difficult to tune a tenor drum that low, even with a 20 or a 22-inch tenor drum. That's why I would say, if you have more than 8 tenor drummers, and lucky you if you do, I would start doubling up on notes. Because beyond that, we don't have any notes that will blend well harmonically to contribute to the conversation. Let's recap what we talked about today in 4002. We talked about the different drum sizes and depths available to us and how they have a certain tonal limit when we're talking about choosing note values. We talked about the notion that smaller tenor drums better accommodate higher notes and bigger tenor drums better accommodate lower notes. There is a tonal range that can only be stretched so far with tenor drums, and it's pretty small. We then talked about why we use the scale of A from the Great Highland Bagpipe Chanter as the basis for our tuning structure. We then talked about different note combinations and drum combinations from the lone wolf single tenor drummer all the way up to 8+ tenor drummers. If you're going to take away one thing from this class today, I want it to be that you understand that having more tenor notes in your midsection is not necessarily a good thing. We can make an awesome midsection sound by just using our root chord of A, C, E, and low A. By using tenor drums on this chord, we always guarantee that our midsection is going to sound beastly when well tuned. Adding extra notes only complicates the situation, so if you're not ready for that, or if your midsection isn't ready for that, stay with the root chord and you're gonna sound great. Thanks for checking out 4002. We'll see you next time in 4003 when we start talking about the different idioms, the different tune types that we play in pipe bands as Scottish tenor drummers. We'll see you there.